Okay, doing a little back end stuff to make sure everything is running well. We've got the normal stream lag going along. That is great. All right. Hello, everyone. I'm Trent Gander. This is Trent Gander's Copywriting and Freelance Writing. I'm a freelance writer with over 20 years of writing experience, 10 of which is as a freelance copywriter professional. Totally there. I also have 10 to 15 years of experience in the defense, security, firearms, and outdoor industry. And this is an idea that I have had popping around in my head for about a month. And I just need to get it out. You benefited from it by learning something a little bit different, and it also builds brand authority for me. So, win-wins all around. Today, we are not going to be directly talking about AI in depth. It is going to be a little bit more closer to the end of my little rant. That being said, a few housekeeping tips. We are going to be talking about some heavy stuff, some stuff that may make people uncomfortable. Strap in for that. That is one of those things that just has to deal with the subject and the subject matter that we're going to be going over and the concepts. So we're going to be covering a lot of mental things and a lot of how people operate in different aspects of life. So, there's a reason why there's a giant conspiracy board in the background for a little bit. Because when I first stumbled across this, I honestly felt a little insane with how things started to kind of slot together from all my experiences and things I've heard and looked at dealing with AI and the other stuff that I've had in my professional life. So, without further ado, we're going to switch some things around right here, and bing bang. Let's start with the elephant in the room, which is AI. AI is pretty much everywhere these days. They're trying to put it into most applications. A lot of the software is going to be having it integrated, and even some of the hardware. This is the nature of the beast that we're dealing with, so we better understand how and why it can be used now rather than later as a large-ass truck goes by my house. Okay, so when dealing with AI and how pervasive it is, this is going to generally produce two different camps. And these camps are divided into the first one, which is AI good. Now, AI good views AI as the answer to pretty much everything. It's going to fix all of our problems. It's going to put people on a level with those big multi-billion-dollar businesses. It's going to make us be able to write and do things faster and faster and faster. It's going to date your son. It's going to marry your daughter. It's going to cure cancer. It's going to do all those things and more. If you don't integrate it into your business within the next 5 or so years, you are going to be pushed out of the market. Now, there's an interesting aspect to that, because every single time I encounter people who kind of hold this position, they keep throwing out that number, that 5-year mark. Now, there's a couple of reasons that could be. Is that you have in normal business, they talk about your 5-year plan, things that I absolutely hate discussing because I can barely see what's happening next week, let alone 5 years from now. That could be one of the reasons why they choose to plot things out at that, 5-year mark. The other, more intriguing answer that I have found is that it could be that they're all getting their information from the same source. This concept of AI being ready in about 5 years, I personally believe is a little positive, or at least over expectant regarding this. I think we're actually going to see full integration to a massive degree a lot sooner than that, probably in the next 1 to 2 years, which from the time of this recording would be about 2026, 2027. That being said, people are still trying to push it. People are still trying to do a lot of things with marketing about it, and it really does, to me, sound like mostly marketing rather than a lot of stuff that they can put up. This brings us to the opposite side of the spectrum, which is AI bad. Now, the AI bad crowd is very much what you'd expect it to be. They view AI as the next Skynet. They view it as being the thing that is going to take over humanity. It's going to do all these horrible things. It's going to date your son. It's going to marry your daughter. It's going to put you in a nursing home and frame you for financial crimes and then make it all look like an accident when it finally gets rid of you. Now, both of these positions are completely and utterly hyperbolic. Like there's probably one person out there. Knowing the internet, there is at least one person out there who believes each one of these greatly divergent sections, and really wholeheartedly believes that. Neither of these are really realistic when we're looking at what AI actually does and how things are working. But that being said, we have to look at things in a slightly more reserved view, which is, I like to call it AI as a tool, which is the neutral ground. So, AI as a tool will work within the parameters it is designed for. That's how all tools work. Once we start pushing beyond the parameters and beyond the means that it was designed to do, we start to have negative returns or diminished returns at the very least. So that means it is going to help things work faster. There is going to be faster integration, a lot more things like, what's the term I'm looking for? There's going to be more automation that it helps with rather than the significant takeover that people are trying to push it as. It's already dating your son. It's probably not going to marry your daughter. It's already kind of helping cure cancer as we speak. That's just the nature of the beast. And that's fine, because all of it, all that works within what I like to refer to as the civilian sector. And the civilian sector is really only one of the four major sectors that really dictates life that we are dealing with on a regular basis. And that is, we've got the civilian, just for a nice little couple of visuals. The civilian stuff is dealing with, how do I make my money? How do I get to tomorrow? How are my bills going to be paid? How am I going to expand my business? All that other stuff. This is the civilian side of things. On the other side, we have the criminal aspect of things, or just put that as crime, the secret ingredient of all things. We have the crime side of how they deal with AI. Then we have the government side of how AI is going to be implemented. And then we have the military side. This military side and government side is a little bit more what I'm going to be focusing on and how I feel things are going to be going. But all of these are using AI in slightly different ways in order to achieve the goals that they want. And you might be asking, well, all right, I'm a civilian, I work in the civilian sector or the private sector, and I'm doing all these things. What does it matter what the military, the government, or the criminal syndicates do with AI, and why should I care? Well, the answer for this is that we are about to be experiencing something called fifth generation warfare. Now, fifth generation warfare is more conceptualized, but we're starting to see it implemented a little bit more heavily in within the last 1 or 2 years. It's been really the talk of the town, really trying to emphasize its implementation. So, fifth generation warfare is essentially predominantly asymmetrical. And the reason why it's asymmetrical is that people realize that having massive city-states and nation-states slugging it out directly really doesn't help anyone. It really causes a lot of damage, problems, and all sorts of other things. It's much more convenient and cost-effective to fight things in a way that is not direct. Now, the major people who deal in fifth-generation warfare are the U.S. and China, with China being a little bit more heavily invested than the U.S. is. This is important to understand that other nations and other organizations will be employing fifth-generation warfare. It's just that the major players are China and the United States. So, in order to understand why fifth generation is important, is that it is total war realized. Total war was a concept that was pioneered back in the early 1900s, specifically with World War I, and was a little bit more refined in World War II, fifth generation is going to be that rendition of it in the 21st century. So the basic concept was that it's not just the military that is at war, it is also the entire population of whatever nation state is supporting that military. So everything from the food that you buy in the supermarket to the clothes that you wear to the clothes that you don't wear all support the war effort in some way. Now this was a little bit better realized within World War II, where you have things like the scrap iron and rubber drives, and you had the gas rationing, at least within the United States. I don't know what other countries did, but that's pretty much a kind of a common thing throughout the World War II era, is that they took all the stuff that was surplus and had people turn in things that they could recycle and then put them towards the war effort. Fifth gen is going to take that to a much higher level. It's going to be beyond the physical material goods required to fight a war. And that is going to be much more impactful to your everyday life than you even realize. The reason for this is that fifth generation warfare uses everything, I do mean everything, as a weapon. An example of this would be using the economy, or even the devaluation of currency as a weapon. Maybe there's a trade deficit over here, maybe there is trade surplus, something hinky going on. People are artificially doing that. Lots of back padding and back scratching and backroom deals, all that shady stuff that everyone just absolutely loves to talk about. Just going on full bore. But what we have to remember is that fifth generation warfare cares about results rather than methodology in how those things are done. So fifth generation warfare takes every single aspect of the previous years of warfare and integrates them in. That's how the warfare generations work. And one of the aspects of the fifth generation warfare is that it doesn't necessarily have to be traditional military might that wins the day. So let's play a little thought experiment as a side note so that you understand what I'm talking about. Let's say you run a nation state and you are at war with another nation state, and you use fuel to power all your stuff. It doesn't matter what kind of fuel. Mostly it's going to be like things like diesel, gasoline, jet fuels, things like that, liquid fuel. And in regards to your operations as a military power, you need, let's say, 100 million gallons of fuel every single week to keep your war machine running. And this is not like super high tempos. This is just making sure everything runs. You can get people from place to place, all that good stuff. Well, in the traditional sense of combat, you could deny the enemy fuel by destroying it, either at the facility that is produced or stored. So this would be fuel depots, refineries, things like that. You can destroy the fuel. Then you could also just take the fuel, right? It's free real estate. It's something that is very possible to be used for your own business, for your own war effort, by just taking somebody else's stuff and using it, because you got vehicles too. The other option is seizing the means of production. As I try to remember how to spell the word seize. Either way, people are going to be trying to take places like the refinery, the fuel depot, and pretty much make any single way to physically remove the fuel from their opponent's ability to use it. So you still need to have 1 million gallons of fuel every single week. But that doesn't necessarily mean it has to be destroyed, taken, or seized. As I realize I spelled that wrong, it's going to bother me just a little bit. There we go, seized. Well, you could just divert it. You could, either because of how power companies and stuff do that today, you could have somebody go into their network, or either physically or remotely, and have them divert the fuel to someplace else, especially if they're using pipelines. There's another aspect where if they're using predominantly, let's say, trucking, to have that, you can go in and you can change some of the delivery things so that they ship the fuel to an entirely different location. The order for the fuel is completely legitimate, except that you change, let's say, one line in the entire thing, which is the address that it's supposed to go. So instead of going, let's say, to the north of the country that you're trying to have your war machine operate in, it goes to the south or the west or the east, someplace where it is unable for your forces to use. Now they gotta get it back, or maybe they used it, or somebody else took it, and now it's lost. And that can be achieved a couple of ways by another thing where you can do some social engineering with the truck drivers. The truck drivers don't have to be complicit in it. They just have to take the fuel from one place to another. That's where the changing aspect comes in. But if you go with the societal aspect, maybe all the truckers that are taking your fuel from point A to point B are all part of the same union. And you put some pressure or something goes on in the background that your opponent uses that union to cause a strike. And now the truckers are striking because, wages are too low, or the working conditions aren't right, or their benefits aren't good enough. And so they decide that they're going to sit out for a week while your fuel just sits there. Either way, any of these options mean that you do not have the fuel to run your war machine. That is how 5th generation warfare works. You see, we have like 6 different options in order to prevent people from having the things that they need in a conflict. But all of these aren't like the traditional bullets and bombs, people going into places. This is what we could be facing within the next 2 to 3 years. So with that in mind, 5th generation is mostly about things that are either very easy to use or aren't very costly to do in order to get the results that you want, right? I just need people to spend a bunch of money while I spend like $2 to get everything done, and I've technically won because they've spent more money than I have, right? That's a little bit of the weird stuff. But one of the things that 5th generation warfare is really, really going to rely on is a concept referred to as psychological operations. Now we're gonna take a little bit of a history lesson here, because psychological operations have a long and tepid history with all governments everywhere. Remember, propaganda is marketing for governments, and marketing is propaganda for businesses. This has kind of always been understood, at least within certain aspects of marketing and the selling aspects of the world, but some people just kind of forget that. So propaganda has this very, very long history within the world stage. We're only going to go back to about 1900 for our examples, because if I went all the way back, we'd be here for quite some time, and I really want to get this done in like an hour and a half. So, propaganda was used to separate the U.S. from Germany in the early 1900s between, let's say, 1915 and 1935. And the reason for this is like, why do we need to do that? Well, the U.S. and Germany actually had very good relations for a long period of time because there was a large number of German immigrants who came over to what would eventually be the United States in the 1700s. They settled in places like Germantown, Virginia, someplace where my family actually came from. And as that was going on, there was this great concern, at least in the founding of the nations, that we would be taken over by all these German immigrants, and the world suddenly would become extremely German within the colonies. And so that's one of the reasons why English is the official language of the United States. That being said, as World War I and World War II started to loom, there was an attempt to separate the U.S. population from the German population. And they did that through a very extensive propaganda campaign setting up for the separation of the two population centers. And one of those things was that one particular German salute that we can't really do today that was popular in the 30s and 40s, that used to be the U.S. flag salute. So there's some pictures floating around out there that are quite legitimate pictures of like Boy Scouts or Cub Scouts or some sort of scout unit for like young teenage boys who are doing that particular salute to the American flag. And so at a certain point, the flag salute rules changed to being the traditional brow salute or the hand over the heart within the population, and that was the new thing. And if you ask people who grew up like in the 50s and 60s, they say it was always hand to eyebrow or hand over heart for the saluting of the flag, but really it was that other one to begin with. And the reason that they chose that on both the U.S. and the German side was because it was supposed to represent the continued power of Rome at the height of the empire. And that has been a sign and a symbol since the Roman Empire fell, And that was one of the things they were using within their marketing, within their propaganda, to make people think that, hey, this is a great and a robust and very powerful organization, and that's what we want to be. We want to be Rome at the height of its power. And so that slight change, along with a bunch of other things like changing German measles to freedom measles, like that's going to work, was how the U.S. separated itself from Germany before it actually started to throw hands with each other. And so as we got farther and farther into World War II, we started to name things specifically. And one of these things was psychological operations, also known as PSYOPs. Now, PSYOPs is a little bit of a confusing term because it is both essentially a unit terminology and also a unit action. So everyone's heard of special forces. They've heard of stuff like Delta Force and the Special Air Service, SAS, all that stuff. The Rangers, the Navy SEALs, those are special operations forces. Well, one of the special operations that can be done by military powers is psychological operations. So you have a PSYOPs division who performs PSYOPs. Now, PSYOPs come in two general different varieties. Remember, we're always trying to deal with something dealing with how people either perceive things or how they think or how their brains do stuff, all that really intricate things. And so we have positive PSYOPs. Let me just put that right there. You've got positive PSYOPs, and we have negative PSYOPs. Positive PSYOPs are the classic things of hearts and minds. This is the military shorthand for we're going to go out, we're going to be really nice people. We're going to make it so that the people who we are dealing with are in fact really in love with us. They actually care what we do. They actually care that we are here. On the heart side, we are the emotionally invested, emotional choice for people to choose us. They love us. We're nice. We take care of them. We pick them up when they're down. The mind part of it is we are the logical choice for them to be our allies. We are the biggest dog in town. We are the most applicable person who is going to help them out when they need to be helped out, rather than, those other guys over there. Hearts and Minds is a classic methodology that has been used throughout the global war on terror, before then, throughout Vietnam, the Gulf War, Korea, all the stuff where there's a civilian population involved at some point. Hearts and Minds goes a long way, because as long as the civilian population and the local warlords and whatever allies you have around you are positively viewing you, you are going to be able to get aid for them, and that earns you a certain level of social currency to expend. Hey, we're really nice, we really want to take care of you, however, there's just this one warlord in the area, and we've got to take him out. And when you take him out, there might be a little bit of collateral damage. We're going to show you that we're not bloodthirsty monsters. We're just here for that guy and whoever gets caught in the crossfire, unfortunately. We're going to try to minimize that. We're going to do what we need to do, but that guy's got to go. And there are a number of somewhat gory stories that I could tell that deal with that in an illustrative format. I considered putting that in here before, but it's really not appropriate at this time. Because we're about to talk about negative PSYOPs. Now I'm going to need a little bit more of my lovely whiteboard space for this, because negative PSYOPs can be broken down into roughly three major subdivisions. They are heavily invasive, moderately invasive, and semi-invasive. All of these, it's heavily invasive, semi-invasive, and invasive. So the reason is that we're always trying with PSYOPs to mess with people, and that always involves a little bit of invasion, whether that's physical invasion or mental invasion. And so heavy invasion is some of the stuff that people, whisper about and have a great issue with. These are things like torture, or the injection of certain drugs, or applying LSD to someone when they don't know. All those classic spy games, mind control stuff that happened back in the 50s and 60s and supposedly ended sometimes in the 70s. I say supposedly because if they did it secretly once, they're going to do it secretly again, and it's probably going to be worse as we refine the technology. Now, semi-invasive are not necessarily the use of drugs or like physically touching someone, whether they want you to or not. Semi-invasive are more things that impact the area around you. And that's very similar to what was going on in the early days of World War I. Some of our earliest stories of post-traumatic stress were usually referred to as shell shock. And this was because there were a number of French soldiers who were experiencing this hyper-fatigue state where they would essentially break down. And the reason was there was a particular base that was a massive bunker. And the Germans took the time to just pound it with artillery. Imagine the loudest bang you have ever experienced in your life. And now imagine about 16 to 17 of them in the next 1 to 2 minutes, if you're lucky. Because some barrages could go 10 minutes, some barrages could go an hour. And it's not going to be one gun just shooting at you. It's going to be multiple artillery things. So there's just this constant barrage of these loud, enormous, painful bangs as you're stuck essentially with this in a giant sardine can where the echoes are just going to town on you. And the issue with that is that it disrupted sleep cycles because sometimes they would fire them in the middle of the night. And generally what happens is that during World War I, the infantry would do a rush right after a military barrage. And so, excuse me. And so one of the things that people would have to be ready for was an attack immediately after a barrage had gone. Well, maybe it didn't come this time. Well, it may come next time. So every single time a barrage occurred, you couldn't just go back to sleep or go back to whatever you're waiting. You had to wait a little bit and keep an eye out to see if maybe a trench raiding party was coming up. Maybe another assault force was going to be pushing up after that barrage. Or maybe the barrage was just there to bug the absolute hell out of you. That's an early example of semi-invasive psychological operation. Going on from there, you have the introduction of some things called sonic weapons. Now, sonic weapons are quite interesting to me because they've been used on actually like ocean liners for years as a defensive measure against pirates. And they're also used by certain police agencies to disperse crowds, and they're also obviously going to be used by the military at some point. And if the military has them, whatever the cops have is going to look like the military stuff got turned up to 11. And the interesting thing about sonic weapons is that they use frequency to cause things like anxiety, discomfort, sometimes even things like nausea, or essentially pervasive dread can all be linked to sonic weapons usage. Panic, I know that at least within 2025, within the last couple of months, from June, there was supposed use of a sonic weapon to disperse a crowd. I believe it was in Italy or some other location. And it just caused a bunch of panic because people felt weird. They didn't feel good. And while that is technically an invasive procedure because you're getting hit with all these sonic, this specific frequency of sound, it's not the same thing as someone like dosing your drink with LSD. And so what all this can be done is that you can use it very focused. You can use sonic weapons in mass as a focus and all sorts of other things. Because I'm suddenly reminded of one of my favorite anecdotes about how some cruise ships would keep pirates at bay, and it is a somewhat semi-form of invasive psyops, which was they didn't have sonic weapons, they had Britney Spears. So for whatever reason, the Somali pirates that were going through the area absolutely hated the early 2000s pop icon Britney Spears' music, and so they would just blast that on loudspeakers, and the pirates would be like, all right, that's enough. I'm going home. I hate this noise. So that kind of illustrates just how useful semi-invasive psychological operations are because, hey, they didn't even have to fire a shot. All they saw was a boat in the distance that was clearly a pirate, and they turned on some Britney, and they went away. Win-win. Nobody stole anything. Nobody got killed. Nobody got hurt. Everyone just got to listen to Britney Spears for a little bit. I think that's something a little wholesome. Then we have the invasive type of psychological operations. These are closer to marketing than they are anything. We've got like media manipulation, information campaigns, disinformation campaigns, bot campaigns, stuff like that, where people try to go out and essentially just seed information that's either false or slightly altered, or even release true information into the mix to cause some sort of upheaval, to change some sort of opinion about something that's going on at the time, or to create such a sensational view of something that people will focus on that rather than on what they should be focusing on. So like, it's the classic, well, this hand works, the other hand does something different. It's classic street magic. Well, we've already talked about psychological operations. Well, there's one layer deeper that has been theorized since the late 1970s. And the theory is the concept of mind war. Now, mind war, as I do this the wrong way, I've been trying to read the book, unfortunately. So mind war is a very interesting concept. And that one of the aspects of mind war is that its goal is to seize control of all the means by which the opponent's government and populace process information to make up their minds, and adjust it that those minds are made up as we, the people who are engaging in mind war, desire. That's from the free PDF of Mind War, page 3, by, I don't have the individual's name, but I have all my references down in the lower part of our description box for you to check out at your leisure. So obviously, if we're trying to control how people do things and view things and say things, and how they interact with each other and how they make decisions, it's extremely important to consider what could be used to do that. Well, finally, this is actually about when I expected to enter this. This brings us to the world of AI. AI has entered the scene. It's roughly around 2022, I believe it was. And that's at least when it was extremely popular, as freshly coming out. You'd have all these video language models, the ones that produced images and stuff like that. All that was going on at that time, and it was new, it was fresh, it was cool, and all that stuff. And then you started to get into things like large language models like ChatGPT, Claude, all those other ones. And what all these were essentially the continuation of what was once referred to as machine learning. But AI is a great little marketing tip because it makes us think of Skynet. It makes us think of these advanced civilizations that reproduce the human thinking capacity, but at a million times faster. It is the future made manifest, right? It feels like watching 2001: A Space Odyssey, but instead of it being a movie about us being in space in 2001, it's about us being in space in 2030 or 2025. And that is essentially the selling point. We're bringing you into the future. We're making it so that you are in control of your destiny as you wield the most powerful tool that all of mankind has ever developed, the human mind within the machine. Now, that's not what they're saying. That's kind of how the marketing makes it sound, but it's close enough. Essentially, large language models are something akin to autocorrect in predictive text. They take a large data set, and then they essentially guess what the next most likely word is in the next thing. So if you give a prompt, it's like, all right, here's the next word that's logically going to come in this thought sequence. At least that's for large language models. I don't really understand video language models as well as I should, but large language models tend to be the thing that I'm focusing on. So the issue with that is that there was a language model boom. There was this huge push to have everyone start to adopt some form of ChatGPT into their business. I don't know how many times I've seen people say, have a chatbot for your business to talk to your customers so you don't have to hire people to do your help desk. It can just answer their questions for you. And we've had something like that before. We've already had like little chat bubbles pop up on websites to ask us, hey, can we help you with that? Well, instead of it just being a human there who they hired to pay them like $12 an hour, they're going to have ChatGPT do that, or whatever local ChatGPT program is going to be for that website. And that's fine if ChatGPT was reliable. There's an issue with this because these things do not have the accuracy, nor do they have the ability to show where they got the information from. Because what they're doing is they're going in and they're scraping information off of the internet. And sometimes this information is intellectual property, sometimes it is just books that they have fed into it, other times it's just straight up from Google. And so as time goes on, people start to view ChatGPT as this magical little formula. If I go in and I do my little thing, this will make it so that ChatGPT will make me the answer that I need and see something that I have not yet seen and see beyond the veil of whatever is going on. And it really is just guessing what the next word is. The issue that I have with that is that it's blowing the tool out of proportion to what it actually can do. And so we can't verify where some of this information is coming from. And I work in a lot of heavily restricted industries that if you get your information wrong, you have a huge risk of getting some jail time for like 30 years. And that's like the good outcome if you have unsubstantiated claims or a hinky way of getting your information. So as this boom continues on, we start to see some secondary effects that people really weren't ready for. So while it is an automation, and automations do make things faster, it can be used to produce something that was referred to as cognitive offload. So I don't really have to think about it. I got somebody else to think about it for me. This is essentially using ChatGPT as a counselor. The issue with that is that a study from the SBS Swiss Business School found that using AI for cognitive offload showed an eroding of critical thinking skills. And if you've dealt with anyone online, you know that critical thinking skills are in decline anyway. And now we're having a tool that goes out there that if you offload most of your thinking to it, will erode them even further. That, to me, is extremely, extremely concerning. And while that is predominantly within the younger demographic of the people that they study, that they show that they relied on it for memory and decision making, essentially asking the bot, hey man, what should I do? What really should I engage in? It didn't help them. It actually hurt them academically and in general to rely on AI for cognitive offload. And so as other things went on in that study, you can read the study below. It's in my resources. There were concerns over algorithmic biases and a lack of transparency affecting the search results. So what these studies were finding is that AI was getting its information from places that they could not find. The reason being is, this is predominantly with ChatGPT to an extent, is that it is a proprietary software. They are making code and they're pouring intellectual property into it and they're pouring all this information into it, but it's still their business property. And supposedly Claude took a good portion of that. No, it was DeepSeek, I think it was, that took a lot of the data sets from the owners of ChatGPT, and ChatGPT got extremely mad. Meanwhile, at the same time, like 6 different locations and across a couple of different countries are suing ChatGPT over intellectual property theft. And ChatGPT is like, no, we can absolutely do that. But the person who took all of the stuff that we had taken before, they can't do that. That is a problem. We're going to sue them. And so we've got this legal daisy chain of stuff going on in the background while everyone else is like, you know what, I'm going to ask ChatGPT if I'm insane or not, or if I should date that person, or if they could write my email for me. And so we've got this wide user base regarding how things are going with the usage of ChatGPT. So that transparency issue is really big because data sets are important. If I can't verify where data is coming from, I can't figure out if this was just something that it made up, because ChatGPT has had a history of having hallucinations, essentially making up things, especially when it's translating audio into text. And the most recent variation of ChatGPT, which I believe is ChatGPT 4.5, there were worse hallucinations within the text than it had previously. So people are relying on a thing that's literally just making stuff up and guessing what the next word is to make major decisions. You probably shouldn't do that. It's concerning, to say the least, to offload all of your stuff to a new technology that is literally 2 to 3 years old in the format that it's currently in. That being said, if you cannot verify where information is, especially within some of the areas that I work in, you can get in trouble because some of that information is irrevocably bad. Some people have been selling snake oil and lies and myths for decades, well before the internet was ever a thing, and the only way you could really verify it was if you had been trained in that skill or had the experience that said the opposite of whatever was going on. And so we have all this information that's now being put out by ChatGPT that is unverifiable. That's one of the reasons why people start referring to ChatGPT articles as GPT or as slop articles, because they're mass-produced. They're not necessarily verifiable. They don't have any validity to them because you cannot verify where they got the information from, and they're starting to technically flood onto the internet. And the issue with this is that Google currently is penalizing websites that use heavily ChatGPT usage and large language model usage articles as being unhelpful content. Well, we know that at some point in the future, that's going to improve. The writing is going to improve. The presentations are going to improve. Heck, even recently, Google just released a new video language model that has photorealistic videos. And I've watched some, and some of them look like real videos. I spent a lot of time looking at screens and watching things. And the only thing that I've noticed with some of these newer ones is that the lips move a little bit weird. And there's ways that you can cover that up. And we'll get to that in just a little bit. But the lack of transparency is concerning. It's very hard to call someone out on their BS if they don't tell you where you got it. And if what they had was, I made it up, where does that leave us in the conversation? So algorithm biases was the major concern that was also cited within the Swiss Business School's study, which was, we don't know what biases these have, because everything has bias. Some people claim that there is no bias within math. There is bias. Depending on how you ask things and do things, there's going to be something different. Data sets are the same way. If I ask you a specific question, I'm going to get a specific set of answers. If I ask a different question, I'm going to get you to do the opposite, right? That's just basic polling data stuff. So we don't know how the algorithms work. We do know that there are algorithm biases, and they have existed for a long period of time. I've been on the internet for, at least in the high-speed era, since about 2012. So I've got 13 years of experience dealing with all the absolute BS that happens online. All the misinformation, all the bots, all the other things. And so beyond the aspect that we're going to take Twitter, because it was Twitter at the time when I was experiencing this, as an example of cognitive biases and algorithm biases. So, whether you believe that there were cognitive biases at all is irrelevant to this conversation, because I have seen it firsthand. A lot of the more conservative or right-leaning things on Twitter were not popular at all. They could not get off the ground. They could not get any traction. There was shadow banning going on, which was the content that they were putting out was not being shown to anyone except for a handful of their followers. And on top of that, any new content they were creating wasn't being distributed like you would. Because if you go in, you put something in Twitter, you think it just goes out there, it goes out to your feed, but it doesn't go out to anyone. And so people were noticing this, and because they would go something that was very left-leaning, and it would take off, and they'd have great traction. There would be thousands and thousands of people in engaging with it, or at least hundreds and hundreds of comments, or something else, or something. Especially if it was political, that would not be on the opposite end of the political spectrum. It was only very biased towards like democratic policies or liberal policies or general normal things within the world at large, but were very incompatible with things like American culture at the time. And there was a lot of issues with some of the content creators there who was like, hey, we're being shadow banned and we don't know what we're doing. The only thing that we can come up with is that is because of our political stances. And so there was a thriving, and there still is a thriving industry of essentially creating content interaction on Twitter and on other places. Twitter is just the easiest one to find because at its height, I used to get anywhere from 2 to 10, I called them porn bots, contacting me on Twitter in a week. And it would go in cycles. It would be like, I've got 5 to 10 ghost follows of these clearly fake profiles that have beautiful women selling information on certain sites that you can see certain things that people generally do online, like the old song says. The internet is made for porn. That was what they were selling, and all these bots kept pushing that, and they kept following me, and they expected you to follow back and look at the things and pay money. And I was just like, this is not a real person. I do not care. And so that would occur semi-regularly for a long period of time. And for years, it might be super heavy, 2 to 3 a day. Then it would be 2 to 3 a week. Then it'd be 2 to 3 a month. And then it'd be a lull, and I wouldn't see anything. And then suddenly 2 or 3 more start following me, and they just kind of go around and they would do stuff. And as time went on, that became less and less until, it switched to X, and then it essentially pretty much stopped. So there is at least one good thing that came out of the change, which was I don't get random ghost follows from fake people trying to sell me pornography. Ah, man, my nose is itching something fierce. While there is a business behind creating engagement that people like to use to boost their numbers, then that ties into the whole porn botting thing. Content farming and inflation of a viewer count, also sometimes referred to as botting, is still going strong. There are a number of things. There's a YouTube channel out there called Upper Echelon, who is referenced down in my reference guide, who exposed one company that had literally thousands of realistic looking bots, either from purchased profiles or slowly built and designed profiles to make it look like there's actual engagement there, that this is a real person who's been doing this for several years and who is not just a new one, because there's always that new profile that follows you. Oh, hey, I met who you are. I love the way you do X, Y, and Z. And this profile is like hours old. These are ones that are years old, so they look a little bit more legitimate. And they're used to make something seem popular or gain ad revenue or do something else. And some people will unscrupulously pay for companies that run these types of businesses to have them boost their content for them. And that's just not right. That's a different tangent, but I gotta get back to my nuts. So there is a new way that people can use these botting practices to target people. And in Upper Echelon's video, Can AI Change Your View? There's actually an article, I believe, called that a targeted bot campaign using AI results in a 3 to 6 times the success rate of humans for changing a user's perspective, landing in the 99th percentile. So, 99th percentile means nothing to me. I grew up in the Midwest, and I'm American. These things do not make sense. But what I can understand is that 3 to 6 times more likely for somebody else to change their mind. There was a specific test that was run on the Reddit subreddit r/ChangeMyMind. They had AI bots trained, multiple of them trained to target a specific user, that being the person who wanted their opinions changed, and build a fake profile around what the AI thought would be the means to change that person's opinion. And it was 3 to 6 times more successful than humans who are skilled in the subject. not necessarily of changing perspectives, but of experts in the field that was being debated. So let's say you had somebody who was a master of astronomy, and they're talking about something in the stars. If he is talking to 10 people and all of them disagree with him, and he gets, let's say, 2 of them to change their minds, AI is going to get 6 to 12 of them to change their minds more easily than the subject matter expert dealing with the subject, which to me is actually kind of terrifying. There are a smaller section of the larger AI models that for a period of time were extremely complementary to their users. This is a little bit different, but that is underneath AI can't stop glazing, if I remember correctly, within my notes. And one of the things that they brought up was that for like a week, ChatGPT just kissed everyone's ass. I mean, everyone's ass. Oh man, you're so great. Oh, that was such great insight. Oh, you caught me in a lie. You're so insightful. You are really, really good at this. And it was just overly complimentary. And apparently it's been fixed since that time, because I really don't deal with ChatGPT. I also really don't care about ChatGPT beyond the fact that it can be used to potentially influence other people's opinions. And if you are a lonely or not a very observant individual and you want to have your ego stroked, if that glazing, as the kids say, occurred, you might just keep buying into it, and that's not good, especially if you're using ChatGPT as a therapist instead of going to therapy or talking with other people or doing something other stuff who will call you out on your BS, because the job of a therapist is not to assuage your fears. They're supposed to help you find the problem and resolve it, instead of saying, yes, you absolutely are having all these things happen to you, because sometimes we make up stuff. We really do just make up stuff that to be a problem. I say that from my own personal perspective, because I have made a bunch of stuff out of nothing, right? So the glazing behavior, as they say, was revamped to be less noticeable a few weeks after it had been done, which means that it can still possibly be there. It's just not as blatant of an attempt to win favor with the individuals who are interacting with it. On top of this, we also have the concept of visual information. How many times have we watched videos online just, oh my goodness, something's happening. Oh my goodness, this is the news. Oh my goodness, this is a new ad about the new greatest thing. And visual information is a little bit different, because I've seen a couple of information campaigns on Instagram and to an extent Facebook, but it's mostly Instagram, that are very much using AI, using video language models to the fullest extent. And what I mean by that is they're trying to sell a product, and they're using older footage, and they're using like really, really crappy footage to kind of hide that it's an AI script. So remember one particular campaign. I'm sitting there, I'm watching this old professor woman. It looks like it was from the 1990s or maybe the late 80s in the terms of camera quality, and she's talking about this amazing, great secret about human biology. And as I'm listening to it, I hear the very particular cadence of an AI script. I've listened to a lot of AI scripts in the last year or two, particularly through AI speech to text, not speech to text, AI green text kind of a thing. And they all have this very particular cadence. And then there was the contents of what she was saying, which was not, we'll call it not 1980s, not 1990s appropriate within at least the academic setting that it was supposed to be in. And I'm looking at her lips, because being able to read lips is an extremely handy skill these days. And I noticed that it really wasn't matching up. And it took me like half the video to be able to figure that out. It's like, oh, that doesn't sound right. This is obviously one of those things where we're selling the absolute secret formula to longevity and being able to be virile at the age of 95 and be able to outrun your grandkids because you take 2 teaspoons of salt and put them in your ear holes. I don't know. Don't do that. That's an example of bad advice. But that's kind of the stuff that they tend to do with those AI processes. And so it's all various types of scams. It's just people scamming each other, and I hate it. Well, now with Google's VL3 virtual language model, that is going to get harder and harder to notice. And we are already at a really bad place for people being able to recognize what real footage was and was not. Like 2 months ago, no, it was about a month ago, my aunt shares this video online. Now, she's an Army veteran herself. She's very skilled, a very adept woman in and of her own experience, but she shared this rousing, rah, the U.S. is great video with all sorts of vehicle footage and pictures of tanks and planes and all this other stuff. And in one part of it, one major part, there is a video of, I believe it's like an F-15 Tomcat, avoiding a close air support weapon with all these tracers just birding out at it, and it evades and flies away, and it looks amazing. The problem with it is that video is from a game called Arma 3. And that Arma 3 combat footage and other Arma 3 combat footage has been used by news organizations and unscrupulous social media accounts to portray real armed conflicts. I believe it was even the PR department of India shared Arma 3 combat footage saying that they shot down a plane. So if people can't recognize when something's from a video game, to be fair, Arma 3 is a very advanced game. That's a discussion for another day. But if we can't verify clearly video game stuff that has relatively outdated graphics, now we've got language models that produce video, like photorealistic stuff. Like the first one that I saw in the list that I have included, in my research and in my reference documents, I thought it was a real guy. I thought it was a real guy doing stand-up comedy. The hands were right, the voice was right, the lips were right, and it's terrifying to think where that is going to be in the next couple of years, to essentially manufacture fake war footage, fake terrorist attacks, fake all these other things. And you have to be extra skilled and really in depth into internet culture to be able to understand what that looks like, what that sounds like. And as things get more and more advanced, you are going to have a harder and harder time. I'm already starting to have a hard time differentiating between what is and what is not a video language model produced a video. And I've looked at a lot of AI art and listened to a lot of AI text to speech, and I am almost terminally online for certain things. And now you've got grandma who barely does anything, whose last experience setting up the internet was having some guy come to their home and explain that it's kind of like having the TV and kind of like having a landline all rolled into one. So that just opens up a wide variety of new ways to scam people. And there's going to be the concepts of fifth generation warfare applied to these video language models and to these text models, to the extent that who do we know who's going to be in charge to make sure that the information being put out by large language models is accurate? Who is going to be doing the stuff to make sure that people watermark their video language models and make sure that people know that it is AI? There are tools out there that allow you to be able to put a video through and say, is this AI or not? I have misgivings about those tools, because I know that there are some tools that are there to detect AI writing, and there have been a number of anecdotal evidences of people physically writing copy and submitting it, and it sounding like 100% AI copywritten. And it's like, no, we didn't do anything. You can come and look over my shoulder the entire time. I'm not using any large language models to write this stuff, but it's still registered as being AI. We're using AI, and we're using products to test to see if it's AI or not. And as AI advances, that's going to be harder and harder to do unless you suddenly come up with some mystical way of being able to sense it the moment you see it. And the lighting. Right now, the lighting for a lot of stuff is the dead giveaway for certain videos. That being said, the disinformation and decision-making processes that ChatGPT, large language models, video language models can be used to change people's opinions is immense. I think what we're seeing is the first introductions of what could be referred to as a mind war weapon, rather than just this innocuous little fast thing that helps me write my emails and interact with my customers and automate my things a little bit faster. We do not know how they work fully because they are proprietary. Oh, I had one kid tell me that ChatGPT was open source. It is not open source. It is information taken from the open source domain, plus a couple of other things that they fed in themselves and trained by the collective information of thousands of different users that all goes back to ChatGPT's main hub. But it is not an open source idea. So what we have is the ultimate culmination of media literacy, in addition to tech literacy, combined with things from cybersecurity all the way to the military-industrial complex, all coming together on the internet. And the reason why I originally called this You in the Cyber Guerrilla War is because people are going to get caught in the crossfire. As governments are going to try to mess with each other, and as independent groups are going to mess with each other, there's just going to be people like you and me in the middle of all of it, just having to worry about, hey, is this claim true? How are we going to verify that? We're going to have to build essentially a robust network of people outside of the internet that we can reliably contact and verify that they are them, in order to make sure that we can get information and verify if something has happened. And the reason why I say verify that they're them is because there are a number of tools out there that use AI to modify voices to sound like other people. When it was really big, when I was encountering it, I was playing a game that had a local chat. So that you're going around, you can hear the people around you. One of those individuals had a voice changer and the screen name of Joe Biden. Now, very clear, it was not President Joe Biden at the time. It was in the middle of the primaries. I'm pretty sure he was busy doing other things. But it sounded kind of like Joe Biden. And so you can get all of these things to sound like other people, especially if there is a lot of audio evidence of their voice. And so what's going to happen when we get so that we can only hear, or we can get that level of control over somebody else's voice just by listening to it for a few seconds? Oh, grandma gets a call from her grandson saying that, hey, I'm in jail, I need you to forward me all your money so that I can get bail. Or they're saying that I need to get it in Applebee's gift cards or something. And Granny, who loves her little boy, it's over the phone. His voice sounds a little bit weird. It could just be the connection, and Granny's getting a little old, and that her hearing's starting to go, and she does it. But it's really some nefarious person who took some of her grandson's voice and then used that to create a fake voice to use, and then called her. How are we going to do that for job interviews and all these other things? That reminds me of another aspect of this, which was how much of your life are you willing to hand over to AI to take care of? There's a business called Cluely, I believe it is, that is developing essentially a Google eyewear glasses compatible program that allows you to talk to people and be interesting to them, and it analyzes them by looking at their social media profiles, and gives you things to talk about so that they find you to be the most interesting individual that they ever met. And of course there's a little bit of the seedier side of things, where it's mostly for dating, so that whoever you are trying to bed that evening finds you the most interesting, and you're just literally just taking directions from the glasses that you're wearing. That sounds like an absolute hellhole of a life to have, where I can't even talk to another individual and be interesting. I have to have AI help me. Now, to some people that would be a very ideal situation. You know what? Go right ahead. But the issue is when does it stop? When does it stop being a tool and start being a crutch and start being a threat? Because after a certain point, it kind of reminds me actually of Batman the Animated Series, where Two-Face decides every single decision that is important to him with the flip of a coin.
There is a great scene in there where Two-Face drops a bunch of money on the ground, and his henchman is like, we should pick it up. He flips the coin, and it goes to the one side. He says, leave it. He says, no, it's right here. It's like, leave it. The coin has decided that we are going to leave this money. And after a certain point, how much of you is really left if you offload all of your critical thinking skills, all your social skills, all your business skills to AI? Whether that is in the Google Glasses, whether that is in your business, whether that's in a large language model, whether that's in your computer, it's in your phone, it's in everywhere. When does it stop? And if you rely on that heavily, when are you going to be like, hey, hang on, that sounds a little weird? Who says that a large governmental organization or a very determined small one is going to come in and say, hey, large language model owners, we want you to do some stuff. We want to put some information in there to target specific individuals. We want these things because, according to our list and all these other things, because they oppose our regime, they are, they're going to be terrorists, or they're going to cause a lot of deaths and all these other things. Wouldn't you want to stop that? Isn't that the moral thing to do? And then a lot of the times, people are just going to do that because, that sounds cool. We're in the spy novels. That's the thing that people are looking for. They want to feel important. They want to feel like they're making a difference, and they also want to get paid. So you'll have the one set of people who will do it just because greenbacks hit their palm, and then they have the other people who do it because they want to do something good. And if something is presented as good enough, people will do a lot of crazy things for it. It's one of my favorite storytelling mythos, and that is every good villain is the hero in their own story. So as long as you get somebody to believe what they're doing is absolutely right, they will do it. And it doesn't necessarily matter whether you think it's right or not. They're going to carry on with their own conscience. And how much of their conscience is going to be AI in the next 5 to 10 years? That's my concern. That's the whole mind war perspective. So, thank you for going on this journey with me. I've rambled on enough. A lot of this was off the cuff, which is what I much prefer to do. If you had a good time, please like, share, subscribe, share it with your friends so that they can also hear a random man from the Midwest complain about the cloud that is AI. And if there are any questions, I don't think there are. This is the question and answer section. I'll give like 5-6 minutes to see if there's anything. If anyone wants to pop into the chat. If not, that's completely fine. You know where to find me. You can leave comments on this. I might check them. Or you can reach out to me via my email, which is secondagealanon@gmail.com. No, I will not spell that out. There's a number of ways. You can Google my name, Trent Gander, and Trent Gander's Freelance Writing. You'll find me on Facebook. You'll find me on Alignable, a couple of other places. And if you are subscribed via the Eventbrite, you will get this video again, and as a follow-up. So I think that's enough. We'll give a few more minutes to see if there's actually any questions. I'm sure I'll get some, because I had a lot of people who signed up said, I can't watch it live. After this, I'm pretty sure I'm going to get a lot of questions. It's going to suck that I'm not going to get them recorded, but I'd rather just get the engagement and get the answers out there. So, I think that's been long enough. I have no viewers actively. Thank you for your time. I do hope you got something from this, because I certainly did, and it went a lot better than I thought it would. So, again, thank you from the bottom of my heart for those of you who have signed up and are listening to this later on at whatever point, and even those who did not sign up and are just watching this organically. I appreciate you for spending time with me and listening to me ramble, and hopefully you got something out of this.